Hi everyone, and welcome to this video. In this video, I am taking my crumb coated cake you'll see here and creating a galaxy design. If you missed that video and want to see it, you want to click on the eye above to be taken to that video. I also want to apologize, my camera is doing this weird glare wherever I go to grab icing, it just like whites out like here. If you happen to know why cameras do this, definitely let me know. My guess is that it's reflecting off the metal of my spatula, but if you know, let me know. But onto the video. As you can see, I am layering different shades of gray. So I have my crumb coated cake and I'm layering 2 shades of gray and using my bench scraper to scrape it away. And then we're going to go back in and layer with more gray and a little bit of white. This is just giving me my base layer for my galaxy cake. I am going to do about 4 or 5 layers of frosting. Trust me, they're very, very thin. So you don't have to worry about what this looks like because you likely won't see this layer, but you want it to be kind of a slate gray. What I chose was slate gray because the customer asked to not have black, just because black doesn't taste very nice. Once I have my base layer, it's time to move on to my color frosting. So I'm using blues and reds and purples. And so I'm going to start with my blue, just putting on patches. So I'm alternating top, bottom, and making them about 2 to 3 inches wide. I'm going to start scraping. To stop your icing from scraping all around the cake, I'm doing really short bursts. So I'm scraping for about 2 to 3 inches of the cake, cleaning my spatula, and then coming back. If I were to do one long swipe with my bench scraper, I would end up having a lot of blue on the cake. So now that that's done, I'm going back and adding some red. I chose these colors because you look at a galaxy, it has bursts of blue, red, and purple, so I wanted to kind of emulate that. And so it looks a little weird now, but again, I'm using a layering process, and so I've done my base layer, I'm now adding into my color layer, and then we're going to go back with more grays to kind of cover up some of this color. For this cake, I'm also scraping all of my excess buttercream onto a plate. And so I don't want to put this buttercream back into my clean bowls, I'll call them, because it's all mixing, the frosting is all mixing together, and it's creating a lot of different colors, and I don't want to use those just yet. So right now I'm going back with my grays and kind of covering up some of my color, and once I have this layer set, I'm going to go back with some of the mixed buttercream to then create more of that galaxy feel. I want this cake to look a little more blended, a little more smooth than what's happening, so I'm going to go back and use the buttercream from my plate to kind of patch more holes and just keep layering until I have a design that I am comfortable with and that I really like. Again, to stop my colors from over mixing, I'm doing short bursts of scrapes with my bench scraper. If I were to keep doing super long scrapes around my cake, all of my colors would blend together and I basically end up with this really weird black color. The bottom is looking pretty good, so I'm actually going to focus on the top of my cake now. I don't know if you've noticed, but my bench scraper is like half an inch shy of actually reaching the top of this cake. And so the top of this cake is a little bit more neglected than the rest of it. So I have to kind of focus specifically on the top instead of doing this in one fell swoop. You can easily avoid this by buying a taller bench scraper. So my bench scraper is 6 inches and this cake is probably like 6¼ to 6½ inches tall. Out there you can find bench scrapers that are 8 inches and 10 inches tall to avoid this problem. After giving my cake a spin, I still think there's a little bit too much color for this to really read galaxy, and so I'm going to keep going back and adding gray until I am happy. I don't know if you can notice, but the gray, there's the dark gray, and then there's a lighter gray that's turned a little bit more purpley. I'm also going to keep using that color as well. This technique very much reminds me of when I've done watercolor classes for those tipsy painting classes. They do a lot of watercolor, the ones that I attend, and it's very much you start out really light and you just keep layering color until you're happy with how dark it is and you keep moving on. And so this technique is very similar. I started with my base layer, added my colors, and now I'm going back to add in my grays to keep layering my cake to make it look a little swirly, a little watercolory, kind of like how you're seeing here. It's looking very, I guess I'll call it wispy, but that's what I'm looking for in my cake. Better description is keeping the lines of the cake but removing the blockiness of where the colors start and stop so everything kind of blends seamlessly together. I think that's a better description. Anyway, for the very top of my cake, I use all of that mixed buttercream from the plate because the top of the cake is going to get covered by fondant planets, so I'm not really concerned on what the color looks like. I did find, though, when I wanted to get rid of the edges, swiping it inwards and on a curve kind of created that wispy look. So don't just swipe inwards, I swiped inwards on a curve and it just looked really nice. Unfortunately, my camera is too short or my phone is too short so you can't see what it looked like, but it looked very nice, just trust me. I was happy with the wispiness of my cake, so now I'm going to go back and add color using a color mist spray. So I'm using black first, just to kind of darken the cake a little bit to make it, again, feel more galaxy. And then I'm going in with this color mist that is like a shimmer spray, like white almost, just to lighten it up a little bit. I added the shimmer spray in a bit of a line, a wavy line, just to kind of feel more galaxy-like, kind of like those bands of the Milky Way. And it does look like the black is super dark. When it dries, it does dry a little bit paler, so it's not as drastic as what you're seeing here. To refine the cake, I added some sanding sprinkles to the bottom of my cake, and now I'm throwing them onto the top of the cake and on the sides of the cake just to give it a little more dimension. I will say I did like it more when sprinkles were more spread out. I'm not a huge fan of like the clumpiness of sprinkles, like what you see right here, but it's gonna look fine in the end. And because galaxies are full of bright stars, I'm going back and adding white pearls that are, I don't say that they're large, but they're like a larger size white pearl as like a star. And then I'm gonna go back and add tiny stars by throwing smaller white pearls. I did buy stars from Michael's, and I was a dummy and I left them off the cake because I forgot about them in the bag. But you could also do this with those like star pieces as well. So here I am throwing on the sprinkles because they're just hard to place with your fingers. And so my buttercream crust, and so you can see the sprinkles were bouncing off the cake, so I had to work very, very quickly. If your buttercream crust, you can still place your sprinkles by using water, a little bit of edible glue like Tylose powder, or even a little bit of like alcohol to get your sprinkles to stick. Another popular way to give the star appearance of a galaxy cake is to paint them on with some luster dust, which you're going to see I'm doing here, but I'm doing more of a splatter paint. And so I just covered a brush with luster dust and alcohol mixture and using my fingers to splatter along the cake. And I'm using gold and silver again to give it some dimension. By now I've said dimension probably 45 times, but I really do think that galaxy cakes are all about dimension and layers. When you look at a galaxy, there's so many stars, so many colors, so many planets. You want to really emulate that in the cake. So don't be afraid to use a lot of texture and a lot of color in this cake to really show the beauty of what our galaxy is. So here are the planets that are cut out of fondant and painted on with food coloring and alcohol, and here's my little space otter for my space otter cake. And so I'm going to start putting those onto the cake now. Side note, to create my planets, I cut them out of fondant. So I rolled my fondant out, cut them with a cookie cutter, and then I painted on them once they were dried up for about 24 hours. I painted on them with food coloring mixed with alcohol. And then I let them dry for probably a week just to make sure that they were super, super solid. And then to place them, there's really no technique to this. I'm just trying to fit them all in the cake. My Saturn and Jupiter were very, very large, and so my Neptune barely made it to the cake. My Otter was also a little bit cartoonishly large, and so if I had made the tail a little bit smaller, it would have fit. Now I'm just reinforcing my planets, like the big ones, with some toothpicks because they're starting to lean a little bit. And to make them more sturdy, you can push them into the cake, into your frosting, and then put it in the fridge. The frosting sets and keeps that fondant standing nice and tall. As you can see, I'm adjusting my planets so that they are all visible and all different heights, but I'm also filling any of the holes with some of those white sprinkles that I'm using for stars. I would say the style of cake is very forgiving because it's using a lot of layers. So if you make a mistake, just cover it with the next layer of frosting, or if there's a hole, patch it with a sprinkle. So I would definitely suggest everyone try this out and go outside and take a look at the galaxy because she is a beauty. And here's the final look of my cake, and I'm pretty proud of it. If this video inspires you to make your own galaxy cake, definitely tag me at Baking at Broadway so I can see your results. And if you like this video and you want to see more of my content, you know what to do. Hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you so much for making it to the end, and I hope to see you in the next video.